just being genuine. I think sometimes so many people put on so many layers of facades. It's like, do you remember who you really are? Do you really remember how you were as a child? Do you remember how to have some joy, how to laugh? You're always talking about this hustle and this and that, and just having on all these different layers. It's like, it's okay sometimes to unmask so that you can help someone else.
Got that beat.
What's going on, family? It's your brother Lawrence here with another episode of Watch God Work. I have my sister, our sister, your sister, Miss Katherine A. Young. What's going on, sis?
Hey, hello, y'all. Thank you so much for having me. I am truly humble and honored. Thank you.
Y'all know she coming on here on the extra humble, but Katherine is Katherine is a maven, I would say, and I say that to say there's this big thing that I always return to in these times, like that people ask this core question: who am I? Why am I here? What is my purpose? What is the meaning behind my life? These questions, I think, are both freeing, but also I think it's scary for many people because they don't feel like they know the answer to this question. They're fearful that they'll get to the end of their life of all these unfulfilled plans, desires. And so when I speak to somewhat what I call the doulos and stewards of people's purpose, of the things that God had designed them for, I believe they are mavens. I believe they are truly under shepherds of God's children. And that's how I see our sister today, Katherine. She has spent a lot of time educating. She's spent a lot of time writing, helping people write, helping people kind of refine their stories, the stories that are locked in them. But I think even more broadly, you help bring out what has been placed within from a good deposit that the Lord has given every single person that he has created. And so for those who are even listening, whether you believe in God or not, I'm pretty sure that everyone agrees that there's a purpose, that there's for their life, that there are things that they were perhaps uniquely designed to do. And there are people who help you understand what that is. But as much as I've learned about her, I can't do her story any justice. So, Katherine, who is Miss Katherine A. Young?
Who am I? Oh my gosh. Definitely. I don't look like what I've been through, and it's been such a blessing. I'm a native of Decatur, Illinois, and I have 4 brothers, 4 sisters. I'm married and have 2 wonderful children, a wonderful husband as well. We'll celebrate, Lord willing, bless 20 years this year.
Yeah. Shout out.
Yeah.
Like, he gonna see this interview. I gotta make sure.
I think I'll see it.
Shout out to my brother. Shout out to my brother. Yeah.
And that's just a testimony in and of itself of how God used us in our marriage to show our family that God can put 2 people together on purpose and for purpose. For 16 years, actually all of my life, honestly, I have been an educator, a teacher, a writer. I was helping young people in the backyard, the candy store owner's son, teaching them how to read, with integrity and dignity. So that has always been a part of who I am. I'm gonna always be me, but I have a heart and a compassion for the people that others deem unqualified, or that they are the underdog. And so it's always just such an amazing feeling, when people rise up and when God blesses them to go to other levels, and you're like, yeah, you counted them out, but they're soaring and they're rising, and I love it. I definitely am an encourager and an intercessor, a prayer warrior, and I have an eagle eye too. So I'm always helping. I've had the privilege of helping at least 43 authors with their books and helping them to tell their story and craft they're a part of their purpose in life. So I'm definitely a multi-passionate individual, and you know what? I'm pretty cool. If I don't say myself.
Yo, I can attest to it. I can attest to it. Became my digital friend first before anything else. But it comes through. I always say that I think, we talk about there's the encouragers. I think in the Bible, people read when there's gifts and spiritual gifts that people, there's an encouragers, there's teachers, that there are people that were actually, that's a gift to be able to encourage in that way.
Yes.
I kind of want to take back, because when there are people who help people to write, I'm always like blown back by the subject, meaning how you understood that you were one to help steward people's writing about whatever they want to write about, as opposed to just simply writing about you, right? So how early did you get a sense that, okay, was it just behind the candy store or behind the deli, or you're saying helping someone and say, you know what, I keep helping people and I'm good at this. And then when do you realize it was like a supernatural thing that you actually were to help other people in their writing?
Great question. I come from a family of educators, and so I believe it just already was in my blood that I was destined to be a teacher. I already knew, when I was going to go to graduate, I was going to be a teacher. And it just was a matter of if I was teaching elementary kids or high school kids, and I went the middle school, high school route. But I believe that the Lord gave me a spirit of discernment, even at a young age, of being able to connect with people in a silent way, of seeing, I see that you need some help. And I'm not here to condemn you. I'm not here to shame you or to shun you. But if I'm able to help you, I can. And so I probably wasn't able as a teenager to really put that into words in that sense. But as I became a young adult and really started entering the teaching field in my young 20s, I knew that God had given me a special grace to help people and to really listen to their stories and to help them figure out, how can they share their message. So I think, early on, I knew it was always there. And I, would always start helping people. People would come to me to help with their papers or essays or whatever. And then I would say I became more serious about it in 2017. I was like, you know what? I can really take this gift that God has given me and take it to another level. And I actually started working with a publishing company as well that's based out of Virginia, Write It Out Publishing. Kiani Bryan is the publisher. And it was a blessed God experience of how we even connected, and so freelancing and also working with Write It Out Publishing, it just helps me to definitely fine tune and help listen to that person's testimony and how they want to share their heart, and it takes selflessness. It takes respecting their craft and their story, respecting their identity, not grammar is my jam, and so and
they're like, oh my gosh, the bear police,
yes.
Right? Like,
yes, grammar is my jam. Like, oh, you using too many like the comma splices are rampant, But when you're working with an author, it's more than just grammar. It's more than just, you're not putting together an essay, but you're telling the nitty gritty of their life, of their testimony, of whatever it is that they want to share. And so I do believe you have to have some wisdom and discernment, as well as the skill to put that all together, and most definitely praying for that individual, understanding who they are and what they want and how they want to convey their message, and respect that and honor that. Even sometimes if I may not always agree, honestly, but I still will respect and honor how they want to share that story. Now, I may tell them like, hey, okay, we're going to do this your way, but these are some things I want you to consider and think about, and pray about, because sometimes some of the clients may not even be saved, but I pray that them interacting with me and working with me, that they can at least get a spark of interest, to be able to discover and learn more about the Lord.
This is, I love this kind of, story, one of which is just being able to kind of go into other people's story to tell their story. Right. So did you make a distinction early, and I would love if you can kind of even point us even to one of these instances, because there is the I'm going to help you write versus the I am the one writing. Did you make a distinction really clear early on that, OK, am I just want to be a steward, or, I actually, because almost like method acting, that, you know what, I'm going to learn and I'm going to study their story and I'm going to understand what they're trying to do and I'm going to get in there. So how did you even how did kind of God lead you in that kind of distinction or inclusion of those types of services?
Yeah. It's actually kind of a combination. I'm not a ghostwriter, and I don't really prefer ghostwriting, honestly. Had a few tries of it, really wasn't my thing. I prefer the author to craft their own story, have their own voice, and then, I tap into understanding the directions they want to go in, but then helping them with the technical parts of it. But even in my editing, and there's different types of editors, like I'm what you would call like a line by line editor. So I go comb through the book from start to finish multiple times. And honestly, but then if they know a certain word, for example, that it's on the tip of their tongue, but they just don't know what it is, I'm not going to just leave them hanging like, oh, you go figure it out. This is wrong. I'm going to help them out. I'm like, I feel what you're saying, or we have a conversation about it to round out and uplift their story, so it's most definitely the author's voice, but, I may add some fullness and body to it to round it up. And then they're like, you know what, that's exactly what I was trying to say. That was the direction I wanted to go in. And most oftentimes the author really appreciate it. And, and it works. It works.
This is what I love about your spirit, even for somebody who we're just listening, we're kind of getting in this train right now, is like, there's so much energy and light, but ultimately you're so learned. And I sometimes I don't like saying that word, but like learning, when you just know somebody, let them read and taking a lot of information. But I always say that to set the stage around. Sometimes it's just like it takes a lot to impress you, right? Because you're like, I've seen a lot, I understand a lot. But even in this process, when did you feel like there was a break in your work, right? Just saying, okay, I see myself helping these people, but when you really felt that God was just like, oh wow. Okay, God, like God actually wowed you. You were in awe of this process, this journey that you were on to help steward it. Like, when did that moment happen when you felt, okay, God, this is bigger than me. You clearly have a mission for me in this. What talk to us about that.
I would say my younger brother, Oz, he was in college. And when I was in college, I went to Southern Illinois University in Carbondale. Hey, Salukis, shout out. And I worked in the writing center. It was almost kind of like a requirement as an English major. And so I had a great experience just helping a lot of, especially ESL learners where English is not their first language. And, that's a very unique experience in trying to communicate with them and work with them, especially on writing projects. And so when my brother was in college, I was helping him with some papers and things. And sometimes I was helping him with a lot of papers. And I'm like, you know what, dude, like, you need to amp up these skills, first of all. For one, I say, and you might get in trouble, because I'm too advanced, and he has his degree now. So, one professor actually said, like, hey, you didn't do this paper, and I said, well, let her know you went to the writing center. I'm like, you ain't lying. I do work in the writing center. But after that, it kind of sparked in me like, you know what, I could really help other people in a more professional manner, because I was doing a lot of stuff for free 99, you hear, so people was getting benefits. And then definitely when I started saying, okay, so when it started going from maybe $5 to $15, then it's like, I'm going to be a little bit more serious about this. And I would say the turning point was really around 2017, when I was like, you know what, I'm going to take this to another level. And the Lord just opened up the doors, and projects and by word of mouth came in. And it's like, okay, let me treat this a little bit more professionally. It's not $5 anymore if you want me to review your work, So so that's when that shift started going. And then God really saying, hey, you're more than just a teacher, and if I may say so myself, I'm a great teacher. I have been working in urban education for over 16 years, with mainly sometimes many of the kids that no one else wants to deal with, but yet I can tap into them and challenge them and love on them and encourage them to be their best selves and to think outside the box. So I think having the wide range of experience of dealing with various personalities helps. So, when I really started taking it more seriously, it helps. It helps to deal with that type of client because everyone, like you say, is not a learned individual. And you want to have and come to each client with a sense of humility, with genuine joy and concern about their work. And, I never want to come off as a know-it-all and that, I can write better than you, because that's not the focus. The focus is, what is your message? What is it that you're trying to say? And how do you want that to be conveyed in this book, in your story? So, those things are really important. And I think when you have that interpersonal communication going on, is really important to connect all of that together and say, okay, Lord, help me to make these things make sense. So, and then I had to really focus on, well, what is it that I'm interested in? I don't really want to do dissertations. I don't necessarily like technical things that are, it's a little comprehensive. I don't want to say boring, but
you're about to.
Yes, there's a lot going on there, and you have to constantly keep going over it. So, I've been privileged to be able to do a lot of spiritual self-help development, fiction, memoirs, things of that nature. And I helped one company do some different brochures and things of that nature, and for a psychiatrist. And so, but those things, especially if the author has their work together, it helps. Now, if they come to me and they're like, well, I just want you to do it. No, I need you to get some things on paper first, and then let's go.
So this is, I think this is helpful because there's a conversation in education that you're familiar with, right? Which is even this conversation with certain charter schools, and there were other schools that were saying they're outperforming, but the argument that was made was that you were self-selecting the kids, right? So you're not dealing with the kids that actually need the real help. So you've self-selected these high performers. So then now your performance is correlating. I share this to say because I think when people talk about even business, there's even qualifying clients. There is, like, hey, yes, I don't want to chase you. Ministry, I don't want to chase you. And I've been there. You're like, I want people who want it. I don't ever want it more than you. And how did you just understand at least that dynamic? Because I feel like you said you had a sense of knowing that this is the lane you need to go part. But then ultimately how you also navigate all right, I am here to help you, right? But I'm also been equipped to help people that may be difficult to help, right? In this, like, yes, just talk about kind of like God's navigation in that. Cause I know for many people, it's like, I'm only going to deal with the ease and the seamlessness. And it seems like you've kind of opened yourself up to not necessarily doing that. Was that a God thing for you?
I really would have to say that, it most definitely was, just growing up, unfortunately, let's see, my mother had dealt with a time period of depression, and in the 90s, drugs had became rampant in many cities, and it touched our home. And I think in as a teenager, in building my faith and my foundation, and building my compassion, I didn't know what God was preparing me for. But then as an educator, being able to connect with a young child, and they're like, my mom is in jail, or, they're on drugs. And I say, hey, you know what? I understand. I know what you're going through, and I have been through those things. It brings about such a great sense of humility, and then, like I say, when they look at me and they say, but you look successful, you look happy. I said, but you don't have to stay where you were. You don't have to stay in that trial. And glory to God, my mother has been clean for many years and is living a vibrant life, and so I definitely think in embracing that compassion and empathy and just being genuine. I think sometimes so many people put on so many layers of facades. It's like, do you remember who you really are? Do you really remember how you were as a child? Do you remember how to have some joy, how to laugh? You're always talking about this hustle and this and that, and just having on all these different layers. It's like, it's okay sometimes to unmask so that you can help someone else. Don't think that all the trials were just for you, right? They weren't just for me, but obviously I went through those things to touch and help somebody else. And so then when I look at my life, I remember I was telling a story about my husband and I was teaching high school, and they was like, I'm not trying to be funny, but is your husband white?
Mm-hmm.
I said, no. I said, he's a black man. I said, what made you think? He said, well, y'all not fighting and hitting each other over the heads with Grey Goose bottles? I said, no. I said, you know what? There's a way to communicate without fighting and hurting each other. There's a way of changing your mindset and having disagreements without physically hurting each other. And it was like light bulbs going off everywhere for these young people because no one had ever had that conversation with them. And so I learned, sometimes it's the simple things that we take for granted that makes the connection, that helps someone else to grow from level to level, to say, you know what, yep, I was living in the projects and I was killing people every day. I had students to shoot. They was wanted by the daggone FBI. But God put their hand on them and they changed their life, and it wasn't for me to boast or to brag, but just to be the seed, to help them to plant it, help them maybe to water it and to encourage them and to let them see there's other options and ways. So I believe in building up that compassion in some of the life experiences I've gone through to connect with others. Most definitely helped make a big impact on who I am, and it helps me to have that level of observation and care for others, because you do have to have a lot of patience, when it's not necessarily a person that they don't see the greatness in themselves yet, and you have to keep pushing and prodding. You have to keep telling them,
I mean, but this point is exactly where I want to go, because you've gone beyond just what I would call teaching in the classroom, right? I think your classroom's expansive. Yes. And this point around purpose, I think sometimes what people hear is like this magic formula, right? That's out, right? Like that one day, boom, I'm going to know my purpose, or that purpose is singular. Like I don't have purpose for my family. I don't have purpose for this. I don't have a purpose for my health. I don't have purpose. Like, so people have this magic, like one silver bullet thing. But the way you even describe, like, do you even know who you are? Do you even know what brings you joy? Do you even know what your gifts are? Do you even know why you're here? I actually think that must be taught. And it seems like your work has gone down this path of teaching people. There's one thing about giving people fish, another thing to teaching people how to fish for themselves. And so talk to me about how God revealed to you, that your teaching has to go beyond the writing, beyond the grammar, beyond the education in this unique context. But how do I teach people to better understand what God's assignment is in their life and what's in them, and how to really give birth to those stories and those stories, those projects, those things that God has deposited in them?
That's a great question. It's a very layered question. One, when I think on a personal stance, mentorship, positive mentorship was really big in my life. So from the church and in our Bible studies, I got to give a shout out to Bishop Reed and Miss Reed, the Howards. So community, right? Embracing and building up that mentorship was really key. So I think when you're learning how to have a teachable spirit, and you have to ask yourself that first, can I be taught, right? Do I have a teachable spirit? Because, there's people out there, you can be telling them things and they could be some jewels. I mean, you're just laying it out there, but they're like, I know. And at some point you're like, you know what? You don't know, but you don't have a teachable spirit. So my assignment may not be with you, And so I think that starts there in just breaking down, what are you able to receive, and are you willing to keep learning? Are you willing to keep growing? Like you say, sometimes some people just are on one niche, right? And but your life is more than just one thing, right? I'm a great cook. So last night I was slaving making some chicken tikka masala for my family from scratch. That's a joy in seeing them say, man, that's great. That's delicious, right? That's one aspect. But then also I have a passion of man. I don't want to see the trash outside. So instead of waiting for somebody, I'm going to pick the trash up, right? That could be another aspect of who I am that would go all into that process. So when you think about just who am I? And I think just really learning how to be self-reflective and taking time to actually do that. We're in such a fast-paced world. People do a lot of good talking and great posts, but they never really do it, right? It's okay to take the time to really reflect on, okay, in this phase of my life, what's the next best thing for me? What should I be doing? What is it that I have that I can share with others? You know, that the gifts and the interests that I have, how can they align together to create something beautiful? You know, and sometimes, I don't know, people, quite frankly, are selfish. You know, and so you have to be willing to say, I can step back out of myself, and the whole focus is not just on me, you know, so I can be able to have a broader idea and perspective of where I should go and what I should be doing.
There are two things that you kind of talked about, one of which is just the, you know, selfishness, that kind of cut, right? Because the reality is that people have been given much, and a lot of it is focused inward, but it was given so that it could be focused outward to help people and to help so many other people. Yes. You know, could you talk about instances where even like, you know, for you, where there's a story of some of you helping someone and what you felt as you were kind of in this conversation with them around their purpose and what was in them. They didn't really understand that it needed to be directed outward, but then you saw when they actually really directed outward, they saw it kind of really balloon into something that they couldn't imagine. Like talk a bit about that.
Yeah. Let's see. So that's such a broad question, big question.
Yeah. So something like just, you know, in your experience with one of your clients, have you run into a situation where your client started off with this very small, narrow vision of what they were called to do, and then through conversation with them, you did realize that, you know, this gift is for much bigger than that, and then they actually surrendered to it.
Yes, most definitely. I think, you know, when they think about like what their story is about, and they might just think, you know what, I just want to say I wrote a book and that's it. But then it's like, but think about the communities you could be helping, you know, the classrooms, the curriculum you could be changing. And then, you know, this kind of that dialogue going back and forth of brainstorming, light bulbs are going off, and it's like, oh, well, that could lead to their next book or some curriculum or a workshop or whatever they want to do to be able to spread their message. So I think with each client, I try to definitely help them to, you know, when given the opportunity, to help them look beyond. You know, it doesn't just have to stay in one form, but your message can go in so many different directions. And it's really empowering to be able to see that, like, yes, I thought it was just going to be this simple book, but now it's a devotional, and now I'm, you know, doing a prayer or a conference around the world and connecting with people and helping others. You know, it becomes so much more bigger than where they began and who they are.
Do you feel that that's the most common barrier, right? That people finding their purpose is that, or discovering one of their major purposes, obviously it's plural, is the fact that they only think about it serving them? Or do you feel that there's another, that isn't?
I think sometimes they, you know, it is easy to think that, because it's like, well, how can I spread, you know, especially when we're talking about multiple streams of income and we want to be wealthy and this and that. And it's like, okay, well, how is this going to serve me? How is this going to help me? But when, you know, so oftentimes when I would hear companies talk about, or individuals, entrepreneurs, looking beyond themselves and the bigger picture. And so when they stop focusing on what they wanted and start looking at the bigger picture, it's like, what is beyond you, that how God can use you? And I think when you say, you know what, okay, I'm not going to put so much emphasis on me, and just flow and do the work and do a good job, and do it well, then other opportunities come together, right? And they're connected. And so I think when you allow that freedom, that flow to go, it's just a better experience for your life, you know, instead of just thinking about yourself. Now, granted, people can think about themselves and they can be quite wealthy, but at the end of the day, are they really at peace with themselves? Do they really have joy? Are they really feeling fulfilled? And they could be the wealthiest person, but what was the real reward there?
I think there's enough examples, I think, of people recognizing that, even though people would be like, okay, cool, I'd rather experience that for myself. Let me get the money first and experience that. That's not all versus that.
Yeah.
I think there are two things. One is the reality that you are in a very, I think, attention intensive gift set, right? And so given the fact that your house is not empty, given the fact that you do have so much responsibility and you probably have multiple concurrent clients, just how that has to be sort of, how do you get to a place to be able to just zone out and be fully present with the work that you have to do for people, because you have to get yourself in the mode? Like, what are the ways that God kind of helps you do that on a consistent basis?
I'm at such a special time in my life. As I said, so my husband and I, when we got married, shortly after, we had our son, and he just graduated from high school, and our daughter's entering high school. So I'm at a sweet spot. It's like, I don't have to find babysitters, and they respect my time. I mean, we are a very united front, and teamwork makes the dream work. So if I have things to do, they respect that. And so I have the time, as long as I create the time and, utilize my time wisely. But some of those pressures where maybe if they were younger, I would have had, I don't have that now. And so that's unique and appreciative, right now in this season. And I think I also just focus on, I'm very particular. Like, I'm not going to work with just anybody. And it's not necessarily about your motivation. That is very important, because you do want the book to get done. You have to get things done. But, certain topics or certain things I may not want to talk about, or, I want, maybe if it's too risque and things of that nature, you have to understand, as an editor, I'm reading your work like 50 times, like over and over and over, really going through it. So I don't want that in my spirit. Now I'm dreaming about it, and I'm, now I'm having conflicts because I'm attached to your projects, even spiritually. I'm praying for you. I'm interceding for you. And at the same time, I'm just like, man, okay, this isn't something I really wanted to be connected with, so I'm particular about who I'm working with. Some people sometimes say, well, don't you write? Don't you do this and that? Yes, I do. But that doesn't mean I necessarily want to work with you. We have to see if it's going to work out, So I think using wisdom in that is key. All money isn't good money, and you have to remember that.
I think that's instructive for people, because I think beyond even writing, even if you have a skill set, where you work matters. Right? The values of the companies matter. Yes. The values of the how the people around you work, how they interact with people, how they treat people, vendors, clients, things that rubs off on you. That goes into your spirit. And so I love that, because I think, to your point, you're pointing out, like, it is supernatural. Like, if I'm taking this in, it's with me, and it affects the spirit. And so that's and I think even to something around the spirit, I think there's something for you connecting the spiritual and physical in a way that I think is really remarkable, right? And so we talk about even the book that you have written, right? And you talk about praise in the pregnancy, and praise the pregnancy, and you could argue that it's kind of like that when you were initially writing this vision for for this book. Did you have just kind of everyone in mind, right? It was like, hey, this is an illustration, right? And so everybody can relate to this. Or was it very specific, but then over time you realize, oh, it can apply to other people?
Initially, when I was carrying my children, people love to give their advice, even if it's unwarranted. And I've just constantly heard the theme of negativity towards pregnant women, or that their children would be spoiled, and just all these negative connotations. It's just like, whoa, like, what's up with that? And taking it a step back, first of all, this is the book. Look, praise while you're pregnant, connected with God through the womb. And when I was carrying my son, I had the privilege of being in Carbondale, Illinois, and I was at a church, and with other women, we would get up at 6 a.m. for prayer. And it was such a phenomenal experience to be able to just soak in prayer and really build up my foundation even more in that connection, of carrying a seed and saying, there's purpose in you, and speaking those things over there. Just like I could say something negatively, like, oh, you're going to be a crybaby, or you're going to be bad, or this and that. It's like, no, you are great. You are a praiser and a worshiper. My son's name, Zamar, means song of praise and worship, and so it's like, you are a praiser and a worshiper. That's who you are. And even with my daughter, while it was a different experience, and I was teaching high school, and even, her name means open to God's direction, and in Hebrew. And so, just being very particular and intentional about praying and seeking direction for their names and for covering them and initially. So when I came with this book, I had the desire to share a story of positivity, of how the power of prayer can change your mindset. It can change your mindset for your child and for you, in your environment. And I wanted it in such a way where anyone, even if they were at a 5th grade, 6th grade reading level, could understand the knowledge, so they wouldn't be intimidated. And sometimes, when you're talking about religion, people think, well, I haven't been to school, or I haven't, I'm not a part of any ministry, or I'm not a minister. And it's like, I wanted them to understand, you don't have to be a minister to pray. You don't have to be in some leadership position to have a connection with God. And so sharing different examples and samples of prayer, and just breaking things down in a bite-sized, teachable manner, really helps to say, you know what, I can start where I'm at and grow and build on prayer and on having this connection. So that was my idea for it, in the direction that I wanted to go with it.
This accessibility piece, you even talk about this, like, you don't have to be, this person minister to do that. Have you ever felt, even beyond just being genuine, that because of the knowledge you possess, because of just kind of your sureness and knowing in your relationship with God and prayer, that you felt that people had to overcome that in at least building relationship with you? They felt maybe even intimidated, or that you would judge where they stood in faith. Was that ever anything that you had to navigate at all, where you had to kind of disclaimer down, or not really?
Not really. There have been some instances where people, small population have misunderstood me because I think, by making assumptions and maybe seeing me in one light and not really knowing me. And then, if they chose to try to build relationship, then it's like, oh, I didn't think that. But I try to be mindful I've actually over the years had, through maturity, to tone down sometimes my knowledge. And I'm not saying that in a degrading manner, but in a manner where you don't come off as a know-it-all. I remember once I was at an event, and a minister, he was talking, and he started using these $5,000 words. It's like nobody at the table knows what you're talking about. Like, you're not relatable. And that's my thing. How can I relate to you? I'm not relating to you if I'm talking all over your head and you just shaking your head, smiling, but you have no idea what I'm trying to say. Like, that doesn't make sense. It's like we're speaking 2 different languages, right? So I think, once again, that goes to your heart. What is it that how are you trying to convey who you are? Right? Are you trying to convey that you're a know-it-all and, I'm better than someone else? Or, hey, let me meet you where you're at. And that's usually where I want to go and be at. I want to meet you where, because guess what? I'm a human just like you. I'm imperfect just like you. And, you may not be able to see my whole story on me, but I'm pretty multi-layered, and I'm sure we can connect in some kind of way if it's meant to be.
What story for you would be one that I think would surprise people around that? Because I think, there's I call, like, these kind of cascading step functions, right, of people's relationships with God, where there are these moments that happen, right? When did things even shift with you in your relationship with God, where it was, okay, I grew up, in this environment, I've gotten to know, but when did things really shift for you, where it started to wash over everything you did, and your perspective around God really, really changed, really matured in an accelerated way for you?
One point in moment, I would say, was definitely when my husband and I, we were going to get married. I was still in college, and my family, they're about education and everything. So it's like, are you going to drop out? What are you going to do? Asking all these questions. And I'm like, no, that's not the plan. Mm-hmm. And I remember we had a sincere prayer, and we just asked the Lord when we should get married. And it was like, I had a dream that we got married September 29th. And it was like, okay, that's what we'll do. And and the Lord just provided for us. People blessed us with so many gifts, and in terms of like the different things that you have to pay for, and for a wedding and things of that nature. It was just like, oh, I just want to bless you. I just want to bless you. And it just was such a blessed union in that time. But we were also an example, especially for my family, my side of the family, my mother's side of the family, of they're witnessing two people that, as my mother would say, didn't come together because of a situation. You came together for love. You came together because God put y'all together. And so that was one of the most poignant moments in seeing like, wow, okay, you pray and it doesn't have to be all elaborate, and you're sincere with listening. God will answer, and you follow through and being obedient. He will provide, and so from there, just going up that next level of faith really helped. And I wish I could sometimes go back to that childlike sincerity sometimes, because sometimes I get in my own head and overthink things and overanalyze things now. But I'm working on it. But and having that pure moment of saying, Lord, let your will be done, and it doesn't matter what everybody else says. It's powerful. It really is. It's powerful.
There's something about this. I think that for me, the question and seeing you go through it, that I think is just helpful for people, because again, what's hard, and I think many people experience this, is just the reality of and what people feel is an inaccessible God, right? It seems even sad to even hear that, but this view of saying God just seems so out here. The way you speak about him, it seems like it's sealed clear that everybody should know it. Everybody should know that God will provide. Everybody should know these things. But when did God really break through history for you in your living time in ways that he made him real? Because I think there's people in this hungering for real encounters with God, because the knowledge is not enough. The head knowledge is not enough, right? And so, and even in the same way that you could hear about God's faithfulness, had there been a point in your life where you also felt that, God, I'm not sure if I'm with this, right? I'm not sure if I'm with what's happening, with what you're planning. I don't know if this was all what it was cracked up to be, the way I understood it thus far.
That's a great question. And it's so interesting that you even bring this up. With my son, actually, most recently, we were having a question or just discussion about our relationship with God, and he wanted to know, like, what was the pivotal moment. And I was like, man, this ain't the movies. I'm like, the Lord had me go through so many challenges through my teenage years. It was
Tell us about
it was almost like this that survivor thrive. I come from a family of where everybody knew us. Everybody knew. My maiden name is Fisher, so in Decatur, everybody knew us. And so when my mother had this trial of dealing with depression and then being introduced to drugs, it just was like the world stops. But yet and still, our family circle was so tight knit. The community was so tight knit. They loved us. They knew that we were good kids, especially my younger brother and I. We were the main ones that were mainly affected and going through the process with her. It was just a pushing, it's like, you don't give up. No matter what's going on, no matter what the reality is, you keep going, right? You keep pushing. And so, even overcoming those things and my mother being able to go through rehab and just the process of it all, those were some years, I'd be crying and like, God, like, why is this happening to us? And then my younger brother and when we were younger, I didn't recognize such wisdom that he had. My husband actually had to bring that out to me when we initially got together, but he had such a calmness about him, and he'd be like, it'll be all right. And although one of our mentors, he would go and cry to him, but he would be strong for me. And just not understanding all those different things. And, in the teenage years, it's such a pivotal time of trying to build up your identity and your foundation. So there were times where I felt like I had a double life, because I was a leader in the church, and, and I'm a scholar and doing well, but hey, I'm not foreign to the streets, and so it just would be like, okay. But even in a teenage age, it's like, okay, I'm conflicted with this, and I don't want to be a fraud and a hypocrite. And even when I was talking about my husband and when we got married, but after I graduated from high school, my mother had been married once to my sibling's father, and in Mississippi, and then she came to Decatur. But I remember praying a very simple prayer. And it was like, Lord, I don't want to go through a whole bunch of different relationships, but let the man that I meet, let that man be my husband. And I had met my husband actually at a bus station. I had an 8-hour layover, and I met him in Champaign and Greyhound bus station. And our whole conversation was just about the Lord. And I'm sitting here in my mind thinking, Lord, is this the one? And I'm 18 years old, mind you. But the innocence of that prayer, there were no other motives, it penetrated, and it's like, I'm going to guide you and show you, the way that you could go. And I didn't have to, it was almost like you are the front line. You are the trendsetter, for what no one else has done before. And it can be a very lonely road. It can be a challenging road, because you constantly have people trying to fight against the ideas and the things of what has been, so people trying to contradict how things are going to go, and assumptions and stuff. But I think at each level, of like our marriage, our relationship, of the Lord blessing us and even healing us, because of all the different things that I had gone through, or my husband may have gone through, was very, very comforting, but it was also like, we're kind of on a spotlight, but, God is still just taking us through that journey, but even recently, my son, he's asking this question. He's like, when was your pivotal moment? I'm like, there wasn't just one moment, because there were so many different things going on where the Lord spared us. I mean, the dryer almost blew up one time, and the house could have caught on fire, but it didn't. God spared us, and so I was explaining this to him, and he was actually questioning God. And just on July 2nd, my son had got into he was in a car accident, and someone had hit him. It was a 5-car accident, and his car took the brunt of it. And it was like a week before we had even talked about, had our conversation. I said, but God spared your life. Our car was totaled. And it was just such a more recent, time of connecting with him, of saying, you see how that could have been your moment. And God showed that to you, but maybe I had to have multiple moments to be able to keep learning how to persevere and how to overcome and how to keep pressing on and build my resilience and my grit. I can't just say it's just one thing, but it's like, a situation upon situations that just kept growing and going.
I think most people can relate to that. That's why I think this is a gift of what you're saying, because I think many people feel alienated from it, because they're like, I didn't have this kind of like the speaking in tongues experience. For some people, I ain't have that, so does that mean, right? It's that. But I also think it comes full circle around even just the simple prayer that you had about your husband. And that idea was birthed in you, and then you had to live it out to experience that. It takes faith to believe and be open to the fact that reality will match the vision. And I think that's, but I think you had to have those experiences to be able to be in the work that you do, where people have these ideas that have been birthed in them, right? That I've been like at least incubating in them, so to speak. But having the faith to believe that reality will affirm what it is that they prayed about is something that people need to be taught. And I think that's why your work is so important and so special, because I do think that there's some people, they don't know what to call it, but they don't know what the first step is. But if anything else, the faith to just believe that it is possible is the first step. And I think you're helping people on that journey to take those steps on a consistent basis. And I'm thankful for that and so much more. As a writer, I always ask people questions about rhythm, because I do think that in these times, people are off balance, right? Our time, our attention's fragmented digitally, otherwise, pulled so many different places, fall in relationship with work, overworked, everything's happening. What is your rhythm with God in life? How do you connect with God in these places where you have to have solitude to think? You have to be connected with family. You have to do these things. What does your ideal rhythm with God look like day to day?
I'm a definite advocate of stepping back and taking that time, to be intentional about prayer, about that quiet time. I don't believe that, especially in the world that we're in, that you have to post every little thing about your life. I think that exposes you to so many attacks. So, I'm intentional about that exposure. And I think that helps me also to have some peace and to be able to have some clarity. And, it's sometimes I don't always get it right, but to know, what, hey, you got to reset, you got to go back, you got to be quiet, you got to fast, you got to pray, you got to study. And you don't have to tell 50 million people what you're doing every moment. It's like, genuinely go in and go seek out nature, go be quiet for a moment. And so for many people, especially now, that's a scary thing sometimes. People don't know, because when you start sitting with yourself, you're going to start seeing the ugly parts too. Everything's not rosy, everything's not pretty. You can be like, man, all right, I need to work on my attitude. I need to work on being more timely or more diligent or, more faithful, whatever it is. So it's like, it's not always just the pretty, beautiful things you're going to be blessed abundantly, overflow. While all those things are great, but there's also a responsibility, when you do get those things, right? And so, and I think also my brother Oz often reminds me of renewing your mind. That's a daily thing. You have to renew your mind, right? And just do that heart check before you go check the gram or anything else. It's like, Lord, where's that gratitude? I thank you. I thank you for this day before it even starts. And just having that moment of gratitude and solace and peace, and having that sincere prayer, guide me and help me through my day. Give me wisdom. Those things are so important. They might sound like little things and simple things, but it's the simplest things that bring about the big results. We oftentimes forget that.
We need more people to kind of put this mirror out into the world, right? The beauty of solitude, the beauty of being with your thoughts, not in this kind of an empty pursuit, but really actually centering yourself to say, what can I be grateful for? What am I hearing God say providentially through His Word, through the Spirit, through godly counsel? What am I sensing that's happening? It's to your point, it is scary. And I think people need more examples of people doing that beyond even just what it does for your work. And it's almost like the defrag for the computer. I need to reset my brain, but also the defrag for your life. Right? I always laugh about even sometimes before I get on calls, there was a time when I was just, I was carrying so many things. I do this sometimes when I preach. I have to go through what I'm saying, but sometimes I just write down what is it I really want to say, and actually taking the time to actually write it down. But then ultimately that translated to me the past 2.5 now years, writing a gratitude journal to say it's one thing to be welcome, grateful, but when I actually recenter myself and just write it out, something happens, right, in that. And so I just think that's such a beautiful thing, but it just makes so much sense with you and what we're hearing and learning about your story. Katherine, I say that there's more people, there need more people like you, because I think we live in such a time that I don't know. It's like the kingdom's upside down, meaning that whether it's by followers or by money, is money is the master. So if someone's accumulated money, then they're the master. They're who I must follow.
Yeah.
But then when you think about the other things I've accumulated peace, I've accumulated family, priorities, healthy relationship with time, technology, healthy relationship with neighbors, and like that's not so much celebrated and anchored enough. But I think when I even think about your work, I'm blown away by that, but I'm just blown away by your spirit. Do you believe that there's an opportunity that God may be inviting you into teaching that even goes beyond the writing, that you could help people be better authors of their life? Like not so much authors, but be better characters in the life that God is authoring for them, a more healthy way. Do you think that that's something God's inviting you into?
I would be open to it. I could definitely say that is a path that that I'm definitely open to exploring more into. Because honestly, I've kind of pulled back sometimes, like, oh, I don't know, because the comfortability level, you're like, oh, I'll let such and such do it, and then when the other person's not doing it, it's like, they're not doing it, the way that I would do it. And it's like, well, because they're not supposed to do it. That's not their mission, and I definitely am a teacher and facilitator beyond a classroom. And so just embarking upon that journey, and I'm really open and working on some different things to be able to have that opportunity to share that message, and and especially that message of hope. I think in a world that we're in where, like I said, there's so many facades, and people are going to choose what's going to be their highlight reel. So, but when you can get on that same level of being genuine and sincere, like you said, of having concern for your neighbor. I have a young neighbor next to me, and I'll call the city if we have a pothole or something like that. He said, I know that was you. I know you called, or I'm checking on him and seeing how he's doing. Those things, like you said, they matter. And we do need to talk about those things. I think the message has to shift, and many might deem that to be too simple, but those things are important, right? To help us to have that framework of love for your brother and your sister, of compassion and understanding. And I think that can help break so many barriers that our world often has due to just not understanding each other and not taking the time to do so.
My sister, even as you're talking about what you have ahead, what is it that people could kind of, support you in ahead, and how could people best connect with you moving forward?
You definitely can connect with me on Instagram. Katherine A. Young is all together with a K. And, I look to definitely be sharing some courses that I'm working on, and, and just sharing more news of hope and purpose, and that we live in purpose and on purpose. So, there's more writing in the works, and of course, helping other clients as well. So I'm excited, to continue to use my gifts in the way that God sees fit.
Katherine, we're excited. I'm excited in particular to see more of your gifts, and more of your teaching, be shared with people who need it. I think we all need it. And so I'm thankful for you. I'm thankful for you sharing your story. And we're excited for the many more of the stories that you will share, with us to guide us. And so God bless you, sister. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Right. Thank you so much.